The committee will come to order. Mr. Chu, you are here because the American people need the truth about the threat TikTok poses to our national and personal security.
The debate over whether TikTok should be banned in the United States largely ignores broader issues around data accessibility, privacy, and Chinese espionage. The marketplace for buying and selling data collected by internet companies is unregulated and can be predatory, yet it's often legal. A ban on TikTok would at best act as a band-aid, rather than a solution to this problem. To get to the heart of the issue, Americans need a deeper understanding of how their data is being manipulated by companies in ways that allow foreign and anonymous entities like the Chinese Communist Party to obtain private information at a cost. Without protective legislation in place, everyday Americans, including journalists, are at risk of being targeted and spied on.
I don't think I thought they were spying on me until I learned that they were spying on me.
Federal prosecutors and the FBI are investigating TikTok's parent company for possible surveillance of journalists who cover the technology industry.
When I found out, I felt sort of like a disappointed parent. I was really unimpressed.
The company admitted it.
Bytedance tells NBC it's investigating the spying internally and will cooperate with any official inquiries.
Because this is a company that has tried so hard in so many different ways to convince lawmakers around the world that they are not misusing data, that there is no surveillance, that there is no spying, there is no threat. For a company that has been really trying to establish trust in that area, this was such an unforced error. They didn't get anything particularly valuable out of looking at my location data. What I'm much more worried about is that if some people in China could pull my data for a somewhat nefarious purpose, they could also pull the data of Chinese dissidents living in the United States, or military operatives, or people who actually could be seriously put at risk if their location data fell into the wrong hands.
Scrutiny over the popular app TikTok is growing.
We have said we have concerns with this particular app, TikTok.
It's really a question of data collection.
Your platform should be banned.
Has Bytedance spied on American citizens?
I don't think that spying is the right way to describe it.
All right.
This is ultimately,
We can differ on
this is
that.
ultimately an internal investigation.
So there are really sort of two buckets of national security concerns about TikTok. The first bucket is what some people call sort of data espionage or fear of data exfiltration. That fear is that the Chinese government could use TikTok through its Chinese parent company, Bytedance, to collect information about American citizens and then use that in ways that are adverse to US national security. The second bucket of concerns is that the Chinese government could, through TikTok's Chinese parent company Bytedance, seek to very subtly influence the recommendations algorithm that determines what people see, and thus influence our civic discourse, our conversations about things like finance, health, etc., that could have a really real effect on American society.
TikTok is potentially effective as an espionage tool because China has a full suite of tools. They spy from space. That's why the balloon thing was a little silly. If you have a satellite, you don't need a balloon. The Chinese have human agents. They probably have several dozen spies operating in the US at any given moment. And of course, they coerce individuals into cooperation. If you have family in China, they show up and say, play ball with us, or grandma gets it. But the best source of espionage for the Chinese is hacking. It's cyber espionage. And TikTok provides an avenue for increased cyber espionage. Cyber espionage is how the Chinese have done the most damage to this country. Bytedance's narrative is that they're not doing anything bad. And there's two problems with that. First, occasionally they've been caught doing something bad, like when they were tracking journalists. But it doesn't matter. They could be saints, because Chinese law says that if the Chinese government asks a company to cooperate, it has no choice. No appeal, no going to court, no laying across the railroad tracks. And so Bytedance, they could be perfectly innocent today. And if Xi Jinping wakes up in a bad mood tomorrow, they could be doing something bad. That's the main problem, is that the Chinese are the world's largest espionage country when it comes to targeting the US.
The watch time with TikTok is rapidly evolving, and the stats are constantly changing because it's still growing in popularity. But the latest data that we have shows that about 100 million Americans are on TikTok, and on average, they're watching TikTok for 90 minutes a day, competing with primetime viewership.
What's different about TikTok's algorithm is the speed at which it can pick in a specific interest of the user. And the main driver for this is the amount of behavioral data that is being collected due to the design of the platform, which is very short videos on which the user has to scroll or watch or like. And so for every single piece of content that the algorithm recommends, there is an action on the user side, which then is used to feed the algorithm with more training data about its specific interests. On YouTube, if I watch an hour of YouTube, I'll watch maybe 10 to 15 different videos, which will get 10 to 15 data points to YouTube to know, okay, was I interested in this particular topic or not, based on the fact that I liked the video, watched it entirely, or subscribed to the channel. On TikTok, it's every 10 seconds or even less that I will give a data point to TikTok about whether I am interested in this topic or not.
Surveillance advertising is a business model that's used by most major social media platforms today. And what that entails is the collection of data on users. There's nefarious types of data and there's more innocuous types of data. They're collecting all of it. So they're looking at what are you doing while you're on the app? That makes sense, right? So on Facebook, what posts are you liking? What things are you sharing? What are you engaging with? But they're also doing things that you may not know that they're doing. They're tracking your location. They're looking at who you spend time around, where physically you are. They're collecting all of that data and then they're using it to sell to advertisers. But it can also be more nefarious. You can target people in discriminatory ways based on race or gender, or you can selectively not target them for things like housing opportunities, for jobs. Broader than that, on these platforms, they collect this data, and then when they don't have any profitability left from selling to advertisers on their platform, they sell it to data brokers, which are third-party people totally unassociated from the platforms, people that you don't know. You've never consented to them receiving any information about you, that you know of. You checked a box in a long, long paragraph of terms when you joined the platform and never thought about it again. But they take that data and they package it and they sell it to literally anybody. Anybody can buy this information, and it's been used in really dangerous ways. Sometimes people will buy packages of information labeled, "Help, I'm a senior and I'm 90 days behind on bills." And they will buy that information and target those people with advertisements for predatory refinance programs to get in and get ownership of their homes and take advantage of them. In other cases, there have been instances where women are being stalked, and their stalker goes in and buys a package of data based on their gender and location and is able to discern with specificity who they are in that data package, stalk them, find them, and attack them. There's nothing preventing the Chinese government, the CCP, or anybody else for that matter, from going in and buying that data from them and from those data brokers.
You have publicly said that you do not support banning the app. Why?
Well, listen, I think TikTok, first of all, has got 150 million users across the country. It speaks to the next generation.
Something that's really surprised me about the way that we're talking about this issue now, too, is who's jumping into the fight and what their motivation is.
Should we tell our children and everybody that we know to take TikTok off of their devices?
I would. Maybe America has finally reached the point where we realize that our innermost secrets, privacy, security are at stake here.
Funding lobbyists to go to Capitol Hill and talk about how dangerous TikTok is. We've got huge broadcast networks doing the same thing, but their lobbyists aren't going and talking about the problem with the surveillance advertising model, which is really the problem. They're going to say ban it. Why do they want it banned? Because they want that 90 minutes of attention span back from 100 million Americans a day. That's money that they're missing. I encourage our lawmakers to think really critically about who are these lobbyists knocking on their doors and what are their motivations.
Bytedance is TikTok's parent company. ByteDance is also the company that first built TikTok, the app. At first, TikTok was just another of ByteDance's apps. ByteDance has been called an app factory in China. It's made many apps over the course of numerous years, both domestically in China and internationally. And TikTok was just another of those apps. It then blew up, became really prominent, and it became important for TikTok to start to say that they have some independence from ByteDance. And so TikTok incorporated as its own entity. It's now its own company. But internally, there isn't very much distinction between TikTok and ByteDance. TikTok employees have told me some of them signed contracts with TikTok but got paid by ByteDance or got a W-2 from ByteDance. We found that there are a lot of people who now work at ByteDance and TikTok who previously worked for Chinese state media outlets. And in one sense, this isn't super surprising because ByteDance is a China-based Chinese company, and all media in China basically is state media. And so you're going to have a lot of overlap there. But that overlap seems really significant to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, it means that all those people in their foreign jobs were used to abiding by the party line about what types of content was allowed, what wasn't, and what types of messages should be promoted. That was just part of the job. So the fear is that that expectation could continue into their work at ByteDance. The other reason it's significant is because TikTok and ByteDance have tried over and over again to say that they have nothing to do with the Chinese government and nothing to do with the Chinese Communist Party. But ByteDance, which operates apps in China, has to work with the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government all the time on their domestic apps. And so they have to maintain relations with the Chinese government in order to run their businesses in China.
I work in politics and tech policy, and here's what they don't want you to know about the push to ban TikTok. As a TikTok creator myself, I've had interesting experiences on the app. I've definitely noticed certain degrees of censorship on different topics at different times. I've noticed my reach be restricted, particularly when I'm talking about political topics related to electoral politics or during election season. I don't know enough about the algorithm to try and make an assertion as to why or what exactly is going on there. I have over 60,000 followers, and when my average viewership is in the thousands and I have a video that in multiple days only has a couple hundred views, you know, something is off. And it's certainly something that I've noticed.
It's really a platform designed for virality, in the sense that a single piece of content can reach a lot of users. So for example, on YouTube or Instagram, the number of views that a content creator would get is much more consistent. On TikTok, it's very likely or common that a content creator will get thousands of views on their videos typically, and suddenly they get a video at 1 million views. But it can happen to anyone that suddenly you get a super viral piece of content, which sort of also fuels a dream that anyone can get really popular on TikTok. As the war in Ukraine unfolded, we became very curious to know what content would be recommended both in Ukraine and in Russia. The Ukrainian side had obviously also a lot of really critical content about the war, and most of the Ukrainian TikTok was anti-war and anti-Kremlin, and Russia was a very interesting, important market for TikTok. In fact, the 5th biggest market for TikTok in the world, which is quite big. But also TikTok had a quite crucial role to play in the beginning of the conflict, in particular because there was a lot of dissent from people and content that was highly critical of the Kremlin that was circulating on TikTok. And so there was even a sense that TikTok could be a fuel for a revolution, or like at least a social movement against the Kremlin in Russia in the same ways than Facebook had been during the Arab Springs. And what we saw was in fact like quite the opposite. Very soon after the war unfolded, the Kremlin put up what they call the fake news law, which forbid the use of a lot of words, including the word war, in Russian media. The way that a lot of social media platforms responded was by completely shutting down the service. So Facebook and Instagram, for example, were discontinued. TikTok, on the other end, responded in a way that was quite surprising. All international content was made unavailable to Russian users. Upload of new content was blocked. So basically, Russian users were left with an old Russian TikTok instead of having a live international TikTok.
Meet Eric Zemmour, who's challenging Marine Le Pen to lead France's far-right opposition.
Les soutiens de Marine Le Pen, vous l'entendez derrière moi.
What we did during the French election was to monitor the prominence of the different candidates in the algorithmic recommendation made on TikTok and YouTube. And so we compared how much each of the different candidates was being promoted by the algorithm. And what we found was that the most right-leaning and polarizing candidate, whose name was Eric Zemmour, was largely, by far, the most promoted on the platform. It turned out that the content recommended on YouTube ended up being much more representative of the different candidates and much more balanced, while on TikTok, since it was just normal content creator trying to get the buzz, most of them would try to go for the most polarizing candidates and topics.
In October, I learned through my sourcing at TikTok and Bytedance that a team at Bytedance that was investigating leaks to me was planning to use my location data pulled from the TikTok app in order to try to figure out who was talking to me. And they were gonna do that by trying to match my IP address to the IP addresses of their own employees. And say, if I was at a coffee shop at the same time as one of their employees, that might have meant that they were talking to me. The project name was called Project Raven. We wrote about that at the time in October, but we wrote about it in a pretty vague way because we had to protect the people who were telling us what was going on inside the company. And so we couldn't say who was being surveilled, and we couldn't say why they were being surveilled, but from our sourcing, we knew that the company was interested in the movements and whereabouts of me, Catherine Schwab, and Rich Nieva. In response to our reporting, Bytedance started an investigation of their own, saying, why do these reporters think this is true? And they learned that that team had, in fact, accessed location data and tried to figure out who was sourcing me. It turns out they also had accessed location data on another reporter who works at the Financial Times in London. So they fired people who had accessed the data, and they also stripped data access to that particular team. So they took actions to try to ensure that this particular variant of data misuse couldn't happen again. What I don't know is whether another similarly situated team that still has that data access could lead to data misuse in the future.
Our story is based off of the work of a researcher based in Vienna named Felix Kraus. And what he found was that TikTok has the ability to track the taps and keystrokes of users when they visit outside websites through TikTok's in-app browser. That could be potentially, very personal information. So things like passwords if you're logging into something, credit card information if you're trying to buy something. What he found was that TikTok has the ability to do this. Not necessarily that they are doing it, but they do have the ability to do it. And it's an ability that none of the other apps that he tested has. When we reached out to TikTok for comment, they did confirm that these features exist in the code, but they said they weren't using them. They said that they exist for debugging and performance tracking purposes.
If you're gonna post a TikTok that's critical of TikTok itself, you have to be mindful of the fact that that content very well may be suppressed. Creators like myself have come to learn how to use certain code words. You can say the clock app. You can say this very app that we're on right now. When I did some content creation myself around the Forbes journalists being targeted by TikTok, I definitely noticed that when I posted it originally, without mincing words, the reach was suppressed. When I posted it again, refilmed it, and took a different approach using code words, not speaking as directly, this very app that we are on right now, it was not suppressed in the same way.
China has a couple strategies when it comes to TikTok, and the core of it is they love TikTok. They love TikTok for two reasons. It's their only globally successful app, so it's the only one downloaded all over the world. The second reason they love it is it's a great way to get on your phone. I'm not saying they're spying, but if they wanted to, they're on your phone. You don't know what they're putting in. The Chinese foreign ministry is kind of like a public relations firm, and they don't really actually connect that tightly to the policy-making decisions. So of course they're going to say that. Nobody ever says, oh, you caught me, I'm sorry, I won't spy again. Nobody says that. But the Chinese are going to say, not only is it not our fault, but it's your fault, because why are you so mean to us? So China's strategy is typical: deny, say it's someone else's fault, but never admit.
The Indian government has banned dozens of Chinese-owned apps over apparent security concerns. Now, the list includes the messaging service WeChat and the wildly popular video platform TikTok.
India banned TikTok a few years ago, and it became very quickly this sort of guide star for other countries that had their own concerns about the app. What we discovered recently in our latest Forbes reporting was that even though the app has been banned in India for close to 3 years, it was banned there in June of 2020, any user data that had already been collected on the Indian population, which was close to 200 million people who were using the app in that country, all of that past user data is actually still accessible by anybody who works for TikTok or Bytedance. The reason that that raised questions was because nobody quite knows why the company had a need to retain all of this very sensitive personal data on who people are, where they live, who their social connections are on the app. There were a couple of different ways that we were able to find out that this past Indian user data was widely accessible inside the company. I can't go into all of it here, but what I can say is that after speaking with a current TikTok employee and also reviewing some things on my own, I was able to see that there is this internal tool that the employee had actually jokingly described as, quote, NSA to go. The reason that person referred to it as such is because this tool can actually pull up a social graph or a social matrix of any TikTok user, past or present, and it basically maps out in very granular detail who that person is. You've got the region where they live. You've got their closest connections is basically a list from closest connection to weakest connection at the bottom. And then other very detailed information about them, such as how these people communicate with each other, who they follow, etc. We published this story about Indian user data post-TikTok ban 2 days before the CEO of TikTok testified before Congress for the first time ever. The story was actually brought up by a congresswoman who asked the TikTok CEO, Shou Chu, directly about the report.
A current TikTok employee told Forbes that nearly anyone with basic access to company tools, including employees in China, can easily look up the closest contacts and other sensitive information about any user.
And the TikTok CEO disputed the conclusions of the article.
Why would a current TikTok employee say this if it wasn't true?
This is a recent article. I have asked my team to look into it. As far as I know, we have rigorous data access protocols. There's really no such thing where anybody can get access to tools.
All right.
So I disagree with a lot of the conclusions.
We know because of the evidence that we have, and we're very confident about both our reporting on our sourcing, that there is, in fact, contrary to what the TikTok CEO said under oath to Congress, there is, in fact, widespread access to this user data. In the course of reporting the story, we reached out to TikTok and Bytedance for comment. They kept asking for more time to respond, And when they finally did respond, what they emphasized was that they remained fully compliant with the order from the Indian government that had come down when the government there actually banned the app back in 2020.
I think one of the things that government officials are trying to do now is fully understand what banning TikTok would mean. It would obviously have some pretty significant effects for the US economy. A lot of businesses make a lot of money on TikTok today. A lot of businesses reach a lot of their consumers on TikTok. But when you add on to that the fact that China might well retaliate and cut off business avenues for US businesses doing business in China or elsewhere abroad, and the sort of spiraling effects of such a big decision in US-China relations, I think are really hard to fully anticipate. There are sort of third and fourth order potential effects of this decision that could really throw the international economy out of whack.
Around the same time that the TikTok CEO testified before Congress for the first time, I wrote a story for Forbes on what a potential TikTok ban would do to the American economy and how it would affect creators and small businesses that have been using the app now for years. The story focused, among many other things, on a few creators and a few small businesses who had used the app to really not only get their businesses off the ground, but to grow sort of empires out of these businesses that they never even realized could really be sustainable. One example was this man named Casey Everson. He had started a garbage can cleaning business in Utah. Casey had been trying for a very long time to get the business off the ground by buying Facebook ads. He said it had been more than a whole year he was trying to get traction. No traction for him. So he took a cue from his teenage daughter. He got on TikTok. He started posting, and just a few weeks in, he went viral. Similarly, this woman named Jazz Sears started a very small taco stand outside of a local liquor store in her town in Arizona. She'd been cleaning homes, and her husband had worked at a local mail company. And when COVID hit, they were both out of their jobs. They couldn't keep working. They opened this local taco stand. Several weeks in, a random customer posted a TikTok, and the next day, 300 cars showed up. As the US government and lawmakers are thinking about banning TikTok, there's the big complicating factor that is all of the Americans and businesses that actually rely on it. I think that the small businesses and the medium-sized businesses that will be affected by this feel like all of the political chaos and crossfire has really overlooked not only the opportunities that have been afforded to them, but also all of the jobs that have been created because of this.
It's the most popular social media app by a large margin. Is there a chance that it vanishes?
People say ban a lot when it comes to TikTok.
We should ban TikTok because it's bad for America.
They also say divestiture, and the problem is neither idea makes any sense.
NBC News has learned the White House is now demanding its Chinese parent company, Bytedance, sell its stake in the app or else face a possible ban here in the U.S.
You can't ban TikTok. If you want to go look at Vladimir Putin's website, there's nothing that gets in your way. The First Amendment protects your right to look at this kind of material, and that includes, ridiculous as it might seem, lip-syncing teenagers. TikTok is protected speech. When we started talking about this 4 years ago, TikTok was still pretty small. There were a couple big companies that looked at maybe buying to. Walmart was one, Microsoft was another. These days, Walmart and Microsoft could not afford to buy TikTok. It's so valuable. Some people say $40 or $50 billion, and no American company has $40 or $50 billion lying around.
If a ban doesn't go through, it will probably be because TikTok and the government reach an agreement of some kind, and that agreement will require more transparency from TikTok about how its algorithms are recommending content and more data protections for US citizens. That's good. The question is sort of whether that can be enough if Bytedance still controls TikTok. But even if the government decides that can be enough, that's more than what we have right now, which is just nothing.
Getting out of this situation is going to be difficult because it's not a simple answer. It's going to require multiple different solutions, thoughtful solutions from lawmakers who, unfortunately, based on, a lack of experience with these platforms themselves, really struggle to both comprehend and also take action quickly on these issues. There is hope. I want to start there. There is hope. The Federal Trade Commission has just started a rulemaking process related to data privacy And if that goes the way that, many of us are hoping it's going to go, we will soon have rules out of the Federal Trade Commission that will limit the way that sensitive data is used, sold, and abused by social media companies and really any company online. That's not going to happen tomorrow. It's probably not going to happen next month. It's probably not going to happen next year. So is that enough? No. But it's a start. And I think that there's other things that we can do that are going to be better answers to this problem, right? We need legislative answers.